All right, question number 14, sorry. What is one difference between the selections? Now, again, you have to use your evidence. You have to go back in the passage. Do not try to answer this without doing that. You also should draw a little chart over here. Where'd it go? Here we go. Draw a chart. Whoops. Okay, so draw a little chart for each of these choices. And we're going to say, you could just say first passage and second passage. Or you could label it as a word from the title or whatever. But basically, you're looking at this uncovering and picturing. All right, the other thing you need to do on these, they can get very confusing. So remember, you can just cross this out and write and mainly highlight the discusses discovering the unknown. Make sure you highlight or box this in because that's the first part. Okay, and then the second passage they're focusing in on focuses on protecting what is known, which I can't circle at all. Okay, then you are focusing in on this part, focuses on the future events. There, that's better. And the second passage is talking about focuses on the past. So really you can even focus on just this. All of them say focus, discusses, focuses. So you can almost limit that. This is focusing on one occupation. Whoops. This one's focusing on several different occupations. Uncovering a new era in archaeology cites an expert to support the author's claim. And the second passage relies on examples to express the author's opinion, which is over here. So this would be easier if you were highlighting these sections. So the rest of this is really just repeating the name of the passage. So really you could label that as your first and label that as your second. Label this as first, and this is second. This first, that is second. So you could say the first passage discusses, the second passage focuses. Makes it a little easier on your brain than reading those titles that are just confusing your brain and adding extra words you don't need. So let's go back and look at what we're talking about in the passages, because we're looking for whether they focus on these different things. And actually we might want to just read the choices and go back and look. Did the first passage discuss, or did it discuss discovering the unknown? Okay, so let's go back to look at the first passage, look at your main ideas, which I again erased somehow. But, that was Paige's fault. So, when we go back and look at this first paragraph is just the introduction kind of. When it talked about the different places, were they places that were unknown? Does it focus on discovering the unknown? They talked a lot about these brick houses and different places that are previously unknown, and then in this last paragraph it talked about the cities that were unknown that were discovered, Atlantis and Ubar and all that. So there's a lot about the unknown in this. So let's look at the other. Let's see what the other one's supposed to be. So yeah, there is discussion of things that are unknown until they found it. Does the second passage focus on protecting what is known? So let's look at the second passage. The second passage is talking about, well, this is introduction, but they did talk here about how they're digitally preserving things. And then it did, remember his choosing their sites where it talked about this, and you should still have it in line from earlier, where it says they're looking for things that are at risk of being destroyed and cultural significance. So they're trying to save things on camera because they are, so it mentions that that's what they're trying to do. Then down here it continues to tell you that, where'd my little color go? There it is. That they are, down here, let's see, they're also finding all these places that they want to save. See, talking about like rebuilding such a site would be difficult but not impossible, but the scans help them rebuild something, so they're trying to preserve that by rebuilding things that already did break down. He's recording things on camera in order to preserve their information and so on. So this one is a possibility. So those both sound possible. So we're going to say that's a maybe. Let's check these though. Does the first passage focus on future events? So go back in the first passage. Do not answer these combined questions by memory. Don't answer any question by memory. Shh. Okay, so we are checking the first passage and to see if there's any conversation about future events. So where do they talk about future events in here? Are they talking about or focusing on future events? They're talking about taking pictures from satellites. They're talking about all of the ways that getting these pictures help them discover cities and discover places that are long lost. So all of that is to the past. And then we go on. The only thing about the future is they're looking forward to, they're talking about how future archaeologists might use this technology, but they're not really focusing on the future. They're just saying, as a result of all these cool things we can already do, looking back at the past, this might be good in the future. So aside from that, there's really no discussion of the future other than what they could do with this equipment. Whoops, number 14. So this is a no. That is not being focused on the future. So really, without even checking this, you can say this is wrong. But just to make sure, is picturing the past for the future, is that one focusing on the past? It's this passage. So do you notice this one talking about the past? They are trying to preserve things from the past, right? And they are looking toward the future so that you will have them preserved for the future. So this one is kind of doing a little bit of both. It's looking back at the past and taking pictures of things before they go away so that we can see them in the future. So this one, I would say, is probably, maybe just say it's a neutral. It's not particularly yay, it's not particularly not good. It's just kind of, sort of. It's not entirely focusing on either one. More of the past, though. So I guess you could either say check or neutral. Where is my mouse? Seriously. There. So we could say check or neutral. Okay, let's check C. Saying that the first passage is focusing on one occupation versus the second passage several different ones. So let's go back and check that. Skim over this one. Does this focus on primarily one occupation? It's pretty much all about what? Archaeologists. Archaeologists. Does it talk about different equipment they use? Yes, but it's still all about archaeologists, one occupation. Is the focus on the occupation, or is the focus more on what they do in the modern day to make this stuff happen really cool, in a really good way, and rather get a lot of good information? So honestly, it's really more about the equipment they're using to make great strides in archaeology, not about the job itself as much. So the second one, is it talking about multiple different jobs and careers? Is it really focusing on that? So does it mention some different jobs? Maybe you might assume that, oh, well, somebody has to manage all these different pieces of equipment, but it's still all about whatever this job is, where they're recording and preserving these sites. So it's really mainly one job. So I would say, again, this is sort of either neutral or yes for the first passage, but the second passage does not focus on several different occupations. It's only focusing on the one job of the people who preserve this stuff. Okay, let's look at D. The first passage cites an expert to support the author's claim. Now, what does cites mean? Not cities, but cites. Cites means that it quotes, basically. They're using their information. They're using an expert's words or ideas to support the author's claim. And then the second one says they rely only on examples. So you're looking back to see if the first passage has an expert. Do they cite experts in here? Do they say things? It doesn't have to be a quote, but it could be saying something that they would agree to. Are there things that they talk about that this Sarah Parchak expert here helped support their points in here? Somewhat, yes. They do talk a little bit about that. But they're not necessarily making their point with it. They're just, they're not making a big claim. They're just really giving you information. So it's not like there's some major claim here that they're supporting. There's not a big opinion being cited. So even though they're using their information, they're not supporting a big claim. In the second one, they said they only used examples. Did they only use examples here, or did they use other things as well? They have lots of facts. Both of these have plenty of facts as well as other information to help support their points that they're making. So really neither one of these is particularly good. They're sort of either neutral or no, they're not particularly strong. Whereas if you go back and look, both these passages match letter A, where it talks, again, it discusses discovering the unknown. The whole first passage is how they're discovering things that no one knows are even there, or that they thought were long lost, whereas the second one is all about protecting what they already know is there. So that's what both passages are strongly about. So the correct answer should be A.